From far beyond the galaxies, I've journeyed to this place to study the behavior patterns of the human race. And I find them highly illogical.
Live long and prosper.
He's dead, Cap. But that's impossible. Captain's log, stardate 1709.2.
Program complete. Enter when ready.
You're listening to TV Ate My Dinner. This is episode 4 for Saturday, August 11th, 2007. My name is Sean. I'm sitting here with Brooks.
Hey.
And I'm not going to lie to you, folks. We're going to go deep into sci-fi country tonight. We're going to talk some old school Star Trek. So before we get to talking Trek, I want to mention something that I just saw. I'm seeing the previews for now, which is, have you seen, there's this Invasion movie, which I guess is an Invasion of the Body Snatchers remake again, which begs the question, how many times do they intend to continue remaking this same movie?
I guess once for every generation.
They have not ever made a sequel to Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but they've remade it like 4 times. I'm scared that this story is so relevant. Yeah, we're all afraid of being replaced by pod people. And the name just keeps getting shorter. It was like the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and then it was just Body Snatchers, and now it's the Invasion. And soon it's just going to be Vag or Snatch.
Or the.
After a while, just be, like, who cares? You know what the movie's about. You've seen it 20 times. I guess that's a milestone. That's like a keystone element of a society. Like, we know when our paranoia is reaching its height again in a generation is when someone remakes Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, we must have peaked.
That's when we reach the apex.
Things must be really
of
bad.
The ebb and flow.
Yeah, we're all afraid of being replaced. And isn't it Nicole Kidman in that movie?
Really?
Why is she so afraid of being replaced with a clone? All these movies.
So is this
the rest of us,
a big budget deal then, I guess?
It's a huge. Well, it's a semi-budget movie, but it kind of got shelved until Casino Royale came out. Like, because Daniel Craig is the big guy in this movie.
Oh.
And he was nobody, and now all of a sudden they've blown the dust off it. That's weird that they didn't think that she was a big enough sell.
Well, very cool. Got some news coming out of Comic-Con. Speaking of cool.
Yeah, speaking of remakes, the Star Trek revamp marches on. As you may know, there is a major feature film coming out that's going to recapture the early voyages of Kirk and Spock and McCoy, and it's going to be, they've announced, will be directed by J.J. Abrams, and J.J., who's taking a world of time to decide on who all's going to be in this movie, has settled on a Spock. And this came out of Comic-Con just recently, and I'm getting this off the Star Trek official website, StarTrek.com, which is about the lamest Star Trek site there is out there, to be honest.
That's saying something. The lamest Star Trek site.
Yeah, but they have settled on a Spock, and Spock will be portrayed by actor Zachary Quinto, maybe Quinto, I'm not sure about that. You Sci Fi fans will recognize him as Sylar from the TV show Heroes. So you get that. There's been a lot of rumor as to who's going to play Kirk, and the biggest rumor was that it was going to be Matt Damon, which Brooks did not believe that talk at all.
Not at all.
In our previous conversation.
If they didn't sign Ben Affleck to be Spock, which is another rumor I saw online,
then
they're not
forget
going to
it.
get Matt Affleck, Matt Damon for
Matt
Kirk.
Affleck.
Matt Fleck.
Matt Fleck. No, actually, I do like Matt Damon a lot more than Affleck. I like them both. I like the kids, but Matt Damon I do think is more solid.
Oh, definitely.
I could see him
and
playing
he's
Kirk.
coming off the Bourne ultimatum, which is huge right now. I just don't see him doing Star Trek. That's all I'm saying. I talked to my sister yesterday. They saw the third one and said it was the best one yet. And they're big fans of the franchise. They said it was awesome.
There's a lot of smart action in those movies. I like the Bourne movies. I'll go see this third one because they're action movies. Like, I don't like spy thrillers a lot because they're usually kind of boring. But the Bourne movies have a lot of cool action, but they're also spy thrillers, so they're also real cerebral. They're smart in the way that they're conceived. And so it makes them kind of unique as action movies, all three of these movies. And we've had our share of dumb action this summer.
I just don't see Matt Damon being Kirk. That's all I'm saying. Me and Sean actually earlier today had came up with some
We
potential
came up
Kirks.
with some alternates, some possible casting.
So we'd like to run these by
Had a
you.
lot of time to talk Trek, and Brooks isn't even a Trek guy.
Hey, I'm not shying away from my Star Wars nerdom by any
But
means.
you're just not a
But
Star-
I
you're
will
just not a
say
Trek
that I've
guy.
never worn Star Wars clothing. Never. Not even to high school like you.
That's
I saw,
true.
but
Yeah, but I didn't get caught playing with my Star Wars dolls.
hey, you were
either.
there.
By a
You
girl.
were there. You're every bit as
But I
part
was
of
the
this
one who
as
took
I
the
am.
clothes
That's
off.
all I'm saying.
That was
I'm
the
pretty
best
sure it was your
part.
idea, as a matter of fact. That's a long story that will wait for another episode, perhaps.
Oh my God, that we should close with that show. but
Maybe
it's-
we'll do that tonight.
Oh,
we'll
well.
close with that story, and it'll be
we'll
Brooks'
do
story
that.
time.
That'll be therapeutic for everybody, and I think it'll vindicate
well,
you.
it better, because I am not to blame.
Well, I'm not making
I'm
any
not to blame.
promises because that is an embarrassing moment. We had some thoughts though between me, the fan, and he is and Brooks being the voice of reason. We came up with some casting choices. We just came up with a bunch of random names, and then Brooks, just to bother me, mentioned LaBouffe because he's in every other movie. But I don't think he's gonna make it. I think LaBouffe would make a good Chekhov.
Yeah.
We were having a lot of trouble figuring out who
We've
would be
decided
Chekhov.
LaBouffe would work well for
LaBouffe.
that role.
I don't know.
We'll have to test out his Russian accent.
Yeah, how are you with accents, LaBouffe? Yeah, who even cares? We'll give him a little Davy Jones haircut and send him on his way. Now, if you're going with Siler for Spock, then how about Hiro for
Aye, Captain.
Sulu? His dad was Sulu. He's just keeping up the tradition. In the show, his dad was Sulu. I think if they went older, I would go with, I want Kurt Russell. If we were doing the latter
For Kirk.
days, if we weren't doing that, that would be who I'd want. And then you could have Billy Bob Thornton as McCoy.
Well, my idea for Kirk, and tell me this isn't perfect. I defy you to tell me this is Nathan Fillion from Firefly.
Because it's a fanboy.
No, but that to me is a guaranteed built-in audience already for it. It pulls in the people that aren't already Trek fans with the Trekkers.
Well, that is true. There are some Firefly people that aren't Trek fans.
That's like saying why would they get Scott Bakula to do that Enterprise show? They did because they knew it would pull in people that like him that might not be.
Yeah, but that ended up not working
well,
out.
yeah, but it's not his fault.
I think what makes Nathan Fillion work here is because when I was a kid, the two major things, Star Wars, Star Trek, were the big things that I watched as a kid. So my two major heroes were Captain Kirk and Han Solo. And Nathan Fillion in that role in Firefly was sort of just a hybrid of those two characters.
He really is the new Han Solo actor because he's the only guy I can think of that can really pull off being funny and also being real serious when he needs to be. And
They're going to look for someone who can be more intense as
well,
Kirk.
but Fillion can be very intense. I mean, there are parts in Firefly where he's very intense, and then what's that show they did on Fox recently where his wife gets stolen and he has to race in some kind of cannonball run thing? He
Yeah.
looked intense in that, though. I mean, he can be intense.
Well, he's cool. I think he's a Harrison Ford type of actor. I think he's that guy.
He's got
But he
that
just
charisma.
He
you know?
hasn't been picked up, though.
He might not have the chops of Harrison Ford, but he does have that natural charisma that makes you like him.
I rented a movie, man. Here's how bad it is, and I feel him slipping into that because he did Slither, which I thought was a really fun movie, but it didn't make any
Yeah.
money. And that was like another opportunity for him to sort of reach the mainstream.
He
It
was
didn't
really good
work.
in that, too.
He's going the way of Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm afraid of. Like fans love him and he'll be superstar to them, but it's like he's one of those guys nobody seems to know. I was watching a movie and there was a trailer for a movie and he was in it. And they kept talking about the movie White Noise introduced us to the concept of the electric voice phenomenon. And now we're going to the next step. And I'm like, why are they talking about White Noise? That movie was crappy and didn't make money. Why are they comparing this movie to that? And they started showing clips with him in it. And then I was like, oh, Nathan Fillion's in this movie. And it was kind of like a horror sort of movie. And I was like, this looks, pretty decent, interesting. I'd watch this. What is it? And it's White Noise 2,
Oh, wow.
direct to DVD. I'm like, why wouldn't they just make that and pretend it was something else? Why did they even keep the title? Why did they think that was going to sell somebody on watching this movie? So that's where he ended up. Which is not a bad place to be, but yeah, he'll never be a superstar.
I love Bruce Campbell. I do, but I do think that Nathan Fillion has more range than Bruce Campbell does as an actor.
Well, I do believe that's true as an actor. And when I say Harrison Ford, I really do think that given that the opportunities Harrison Ford, I think he could blossom into an actor of that caliber because he has a range there.
Yeah, and
He has the charisma, he has the humanity. What made Harrison Ford work was he could be very dramatic and very intense, but he wasn't a guy you would say that's an action guy, because you always felt it when he took a hit.
Yeah, because it just seemed real.
I think Nathan Fillion's that kind of guy too, and that character sort of brought that out. You feel like, yeah, he'll win the fight, but he's not coming out of it without a bloody nose.
And you can feel the humanity. You can see the emotion. And that's hard to convey.
It's real.
Yeah, obviously, because no one else is doing it.
Science fiction's very lacking in sincerity in these days. And I think a lot of people gravitated towards Firefly, not just because it was a fun concept and because it had a lot of good one-liners and all that, but I think you really felt for these characters. There was a real humanity at the core there, and in his character in particular, and you felt it. Like, it was fun, but at the same time, you're like, that's a cool space adventure, but I don't think I'd want that to be my life.
Yeah.
It's hard to have that kind of sincerity when you're playing a genre character, because everything else is so completely unbelievable.
So that's my vote for Kirk. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I've got one for you here. If they go that way, let's go for cast chemistry. And you could go ahead and bring in Alan Tudyk as Spock. And he was the pilot on the show. And then you could go ahead and bring in Adam Baldwin as
the
McCoy.
blonde guy? Wash?
Yeah.
As
he plays
Spock?
robots.
No,
he played a robot.
No. Yeah, he could be McCoy, maybe.
No, Adam Baldwin is McCoy. I go with that. I'm a lifelong Adam Baldwin fan, and I'll tell you why. Because back in 1982, he made DC Cab. To this day, that will be one of my favorite movies till I die. So I am a lifelong Adam Baldwin fan. I want nothing but good for him.
We need to get back into our Star Trek, or I'm going to have to change the picture I put online.
Well, exactly. Well, this brings me, speaking of the picture that is on the website.
Yeah, see, perfect lead in.
You've got this built-in audience that will watch this new Star Trek New Voyages, which is a fan-produced, fan fiction Star Trek show online. People are watching this show that it's Star Trek, and it's made by fans who decided to make a show that is a continuation of the original series that finishes out the 5-year mission. So this guy, James Cawley, started his production company, and they built Star Trek sets, and they made Star Trek costumes, and they started shooting Star Trek episodes with him as Kirk.
Naturally.
And then he's got another guy that plays Spock, and they got another guy that plays McCoy, and they try to do these shows that follow the vein of the very original Star Trek show. And people are downloading it like crazy, and they're watching it like crazy. And he was at Dragon Con last year saying, I don't understand why Paramount doesn't catch on that we're getting millions and millions of downloads. Why don't they want to put this on DVD or something like that? It's like, because that by itself, which appeals to only the built-in audience, is helping to promote the concept without their having to subsidize it. So they take that, which is helping to keep interest alive amongst the hardcore fans, and they go make something mainstream like this Star Trek movie they're making now. And they get J.J. Abrams, and they get semi-known actors to play these characters that are known, and they try to make something that will appeal to non-Star Trek fans, because they know those guys are already gonna see the movie. And this is a conversation I had with my buddy Wilson not too long ago, where we were talking about the new Indiana Jones movie and what a dumb idea it is, and they should never make another. Let's just going back and ruining the legend and blah blah blah. And he's like, well, we're the problem, because we're going to be the first in line. We can't wait to see this thing to go tell people how much we hate it. Now, I think they have, due to continued poor quality of the product,
they've kind of diluted the market
they have
a little bit.
They've diluted their own market.
Well,
I
yeah.
think they have whittled away that core audience, because it used to be bigger. There is a smaller group of people that'll go see something just because it has Star Trek on it, because they've put out enough things. Well, and Star Trek created the market that killed it, because Star Trek The Next Generation, when it came out, was the first major show that came out not on a network. It was the first major syndicated program, and it created this syndication explosion, which ended up creating shows like Babylon 5. The erosion of the Star Trek fan base came with shows like Babylon 5, which I've never liked. I don't like this show, but there were so many people hungry for what they thought was the core of Star Trek not being represented in the show, and then this show comes out that to them represents that.
As a non-fan, here's what the Star Trek started looking like to me, and where I got lost. You had Star Trek, the original series, which I did like. I'll say I'm a fan of that. I've seen almost all of them. I really like the original series. Next Generation came out. I didn't care that much for it, even though I was young, because it seemed kind of stuffy and like it took itself very seriously.
Kind of stupid.
Well, it also delved in with the holodeck some weirdness. Anyway. But where I think Star Trek ran into problems is when it started having other Star Treks going on at the same time. How many different shows were there all together?
Deep Space Nine started at the tail end of Next Generation, and then Deep Space Nine was on for maybe 2 years before Voyager. And that's how that sort of became the bastard child of the franchise, and I think the best spinoff. Because that show kind of got forgotten by the main guys.
Oh, I'm just saying that, you're going to dilute your audience to a certain point. You have a core audience that's all about Star Trek, diehard fans. You get 2, 3, 4 shows. They're having to watch 4 shows and keep up with all this stuff going on. Sooner or later, they're getting older. They're having kids and stuff. Their kids aren't into it. They're into, Xbox or something. So if you have a product everyone can get behind, like a movie franchise or a show, I think you're all right. But if you start splitting apart into all these different shows, you're just diluting your audience, it seems like. Because then you get people that are like, well, I like this one, but I don't like that one. Well, I like this one, and then you've split your audience into factions.
Well, yeah, they had a moment where Deep Space Nine and Voyager were running at the same time, and there were Next Generation films out at the same time. So that was a saturation point. And all of those were not very good. Yeah, they were okay, but there wasn't a flagship at the time. The flagship of Star Trek is still the original show, and it's like you've had like 9 series, and still they don't compare to the original. It starts to show you if guys on the internet are pretending to be Kirk and Spock, and people are enthralled. Then that does show like deviate. Nobody's pretending to be Picard. Nobody's making a show continuing those because they feel like they got it. Like, yeah, that's fine. I feel like we saw all the Picard adventures. I feel like we saw way more than we needed to. So I think it's Kirk that they felt cheated out of, because by the time they finally came back and started movies, those guys were getting old and fat and they weren't in their prime anymore. It's like we missed out on some prime Kirk years.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to see him kissing chicks.
Well, also, I don't know that much about the new stuff. I've always said I'm an analog nerd, because all this old school stuff, you want to talk old Star Trek, you want to talk Star Wars, I get it. I think Babylon 5 is newfangled sci-fi, and that show went off the air 5, 6 years ago, 10 years ago. It was a long time. So, if we go to Dragon Con at some point, I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know what people are dressed up as. It's a good thing there are so many stormtroopers out there, because that's the only familiarity I have.
That's the anchor that keeps us in that world.
It's the truth.
Every time we 30-year-old nerds think that we've grown out of it, they find a way to rehash something we loved as kids. Like Transformers. I mean, who had ever thought that a toy that we played with 20 years ago would all of a sudden be a big movie? It's obvious they're trying to, because they know, they're like, wait a minute, those guys have money now. All those nerds that we tried to hit up years ago, they've got jobs.
Yeah. We don't have to just sell them toys anymore.
They'll still buy the toys. Keep making them.
They'll buy the toys for their kids. They'll buy an extra one for themselves to keep in the box. They'll go to see the movie. They'll buy the DVD even though they already downloaded it.
It's like I'm trying to outgrow my nerddom, and they keep bringing up stuff that I love.
It's the perfect market.
They're not making, there's no new Star Wars. And I mean, there's a Star Wars prequels, but that's Star Wars. You know what I mean? There's no movie coming out now that is what Star Wars was then, or you know what I'm saying. They're not making new things. They're rehashing old things. And where's the new stuff? We have X-Men, Spider-Man. All of these are, I guess they're afraid to try something that hasn't been market tested. All these things are things that have already permeated the culture, that already have saturation built in.
And that's where we're to blame again.
And that's all you're seeing. And I'm not complaining, because I like this stuff. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that by the time they're going to reach a point where we're in our 50s and we're probably not going to want to go to the theater and see this stuff, and then they're going to have to make up something new.
Well, hopefully the paradigm shift will have occurred at that point. We're like the pivotal information generation. Like everything big happened. We talked about this a little bit last week, but it's true. Like everything big happened technology-wise while we were kids. And so they don't know who to reach out to anymore because like kids, it's harder to reach those kids because they're watching. I don't get it, and I was a total nerd, you know, and I still like nerdy things. And I look at the stuff they're watching and doing. I'm like, what is that? Like, what is a Pokemon?
Adult Swim, and it's like, is this supposed to be funny? I'm just feeling old. I don't understand.
It's true. A lot of that stuff, and the stuff for the kids, like all this, like why the Japanese stuff that's just card games and things, like it all. But at the same time, I think the people that are making this stuff are at least our age. Like some of the stuff that's marketed towards us is because people of our generation are now old enough to be making Batman movies and Star Trek movies. They're not like trying to figure out what we're into. They get it. But they don't know what 18-year-old kids are into because they don't know what they like. They don't understand it any better than we do. So they're making this stuff. By the time we're 50, some other generation will have taken over. And then our, like, the emphasis on us and the things we like will have faded away. Like, when we're 50, there won't be Star Trek movies. You know
I wonder. The kids are playing with Transformers right now.
Well, I guess maybe that is the future of it. What they'll do is they're making those kids think that they own that stuff when actually we had it. Like, they used to have the big Kung Fu grip G.I. Joes before we were around. And then they made the little G.I. Joes, and we think of G.I. Joe as ours. But there was, like, a generation before us of G.I. Joes. So maybe. But that's even more depressing. So, like, it's nothing new. There isn't a new G.I. Joe as in a new toy line that does that. That isn't based on some Japanese cartoon. But I think I tend to watch mainstream television more than I watch genre television. To me, you know, I don't think there is a new Star Trek. It's when it comes to sci-fi shows, I think they're mostly crappy and they're overplayed and they're overdone and they're overproduced and they're overly dramatic. You know, every now and then you just want to see a guy throw a styrofoam rock at a robot. And like, well, you guys, put subtext in it if you want me to learn something, but like, I cut the monologues and the crap and the crying, and who even cares? I can't watch Battlestar Galactica now, because that's all it is every week. Someone's a traitor, someone's gonna die, someone's going to Earth. Like, who cares? To me, there's a lot of stuff in that show that is valid and it's extremely well done, but there is a point where you have to say, guys, we're flying spaceships. Like, let's run with this. Like, let's not. I mean, they've tried too hard, because the original Battlestar Galactica was campy. It was an old campy show, but it somehow it had an element in it that suggested something more, and that's what gave you the legitimacy. Like, oh, well, there is something valid in this too. But for the most part, they're shooting lasers and stuff. They got aliens, and there's a robot dog and stuff. Battlestar Galactica is like they're trying to be gritty, like they're NYPD Blue,
yeah.
But they have their own made-up curse
isn't that kind of an
like this frack of a mother fracker.
This is an unfortunate sign of the times too. I think how things that used to sci-fi used to be kind of jubilant and bright and upbeat. Now everything is so dark. Like all the shows now are about death and destruction and terrorism. It's all like a parable for what I guess people really feel nowadays, and that's sad if that's how we're feeling. You know, Star Trek itself was all about hope.
Originally, the whole idea of Star Trek, there's a black woman on the ship. We're hanging out with a Russian during the Cold War. One of the main guys is a Russian. Like, there's this whole... There wasn't an ethnocentric feel to it. It's like they have an alien on board. They're like, we believe that in the future, not only will all the races of humankind band together, but we'll actually go find other races and make friends with them. And there'll be trouble. But the focus of the original Star Trek show was not that there was a war going on. It was they were exploring. They were exploring.
Yeah, it was a
the
very
universe.
positive and optimistic worldview. I hope that the new Star Trek movie revives that and takes that up.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I think that Lord of the Rings did so well, besides the fact that it's exceptionally well done and based on like great literature and all of that, but you know, move all that aside. Besides all that, I think it did really well because it's a very core good versus evil, and good has the strength to triumph over it. It's not like the world is coming to an end and there's nothing we can do and it's real gritty. It's the world's coming to an end, but there is something we can do, and we're all going to band together and do it. You know, you get all the different races come together into the fellowship. Man, I'm nerding out.
Well, that's the important thing. Well, not to be too nerdy, but I mean, I really do think that people take for granted that that's a word we don't use anymore. Fellowship. Like, it introduces that concept where actually when all the chips are down and everything could not be worse, if you can stick close to the people that you love, if friendship can be the thing that saves the whole world. And that's the concept. That's why the hobbits are so important in that story, because they're nothing. They're not fighters. They're not adventurers. They're not the big players in any way. But one thing that they'll do better than anybody in this universe is when there's trouble, they'll stick together. They won't turn their back on a friend no matter what, even if you're in the heart of hell. That's a story I think we could use a little bit more of. That's why there's not a new Star Wars now, because nobody's making movies like that. Nobody's making movies that capture that.
But to bring it back around, full circle to Star Trek again, what I liked as a kid when I was watching Star Trek, I think what appealed to me were the characters. They were fun, they had these fun, goofy adventures and stuff, but, they really did have a good dynamic together, and they cared about each other. They would pick on each other, Bones and Spock and stuff, but you can tell that they really were a positive group. You know what I mean? There was nothing in there dark and sinister. The way with Battlestar or Stargate and all these other kind of shows, you always get a feeling everybody's cynical. No one was cynical on Star Trek. You can say that. I can't think of it. Bones is the most cynical guy there, and he's the medic. He's not cynical.
It used to be the role of science fiction to tell us everything was going to be all right. Now science fiction is showing us stuff that's worse than what's going on already.
No, not just that, but to get their morality tales. Even the original Star Trek, they were all these little morality tales. Like they'd go to the planet where people are half their face was white and the other half black, and they hated the other people on the planet whose opposite ends.
Well, what I like is how nobody else could tell the difference.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what classic science fiction is all about.
But
classic.
That was very cheesy. That's what I'm getting at altogether. That was at face value very cheesy, but it had an important message. I think that's what we're losing. It's like so many people have become so visually talented, and there's such high production quality of these things that there isn't anything I see anymore that isn't visually amazing, and I don't care.
Because they're not. It's the storytelling.
I'm hoping that the return to Kirk and the return to Spock and the return to McCoy in this new Star Trek movie, I'm hoping that's a concession on their part, that it is the characters, like that whole concept of idealistic hope, that dynamic is what they want to get back to. That's what I'm hoping for in these movies, because I'd like to see that. Sci-fi, I'm telling you right now, and sci-fi fans too, you're a crock to me. I haven't seen anything sci-fi that's come out in the last 10, 15 years that's worth anything to me. But I would welcome being wrong. I would love, if there's something I haven't seen out there, bring it back. The best thing I've watched in the last 10 years is Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Well, Firefly. Firefly.
Yeah. These are not... Well, yeah, Firefly is probably the closest thing. But I'm not going to give you points for that because it lasted 12 episodes. So give me one of these great Stargate, Atlantis kind of shows. Sell me.
Man, how come
Stargate
you telling me
Atlantis.
the movie Stargate spawned
Bigfoot?
enough fans to make 5 TV shows or something, and they can't do that with Firefly? I should change the picture on the site to Firefly. That's what we're talking about.
That makes me so mad. That Stargate thing in particular is like, okay, how about Stargate the Unicorn Hunters?
Dr. Unicorn's Flights of Stargate Fantasy.
How about just fill every sci-fi show with as much pointless, nerdy crap? And what did the Stargate lady do? She walked around in a dominatrix outfit trying to seduce the egg-headed nerd. Because that's the escapist sci-fi that you always see in these stupid shows, and it makes me crazy. Because these shows all center around the idea that we're going to travel to another planet because we're so smart. We didn't make it in high school. We couldn't play football. Well, we're inexplicably good looking, but we're smart. We're going to go to another planet, and we're going to find a planet full of really nymphy chicks who love smart guys. And that's what happened to Star Trek. Every show had the patented girl in spandex for no reason. Always a supermodel in spandex, no matter. And then like, but the rest of the show is really cerebral. It's like, I don't care. This This is ridiculous.
I didn't even watch that, but I saw the commercials where like, this week the Vulcan girl is in heat and must find a mate. I'm like, oh
Exactly.
man, that is
Lieutenant
nuts.
Cameltoe from the planet Volva is going into heat. Must find a man to rub her down with blue gel.
I mean, if that wasn't a story at all, that's sad.
I'm not the kind of guy that reads Playboy for the articles. That's all I'm saying. Like, say what is what it is. Say we make a bunch of kitschy crap, but don't pretend that you're some noble sci-fi show if you have stuff like that. Put some pants on that chick. She's supposed to be a scientist. The one great thing that this new movie represents is that they've finally taken the franchise out of the hands of the creative people who've ruined it for the last 20 years. Because that show was a good concept. That show was a decent concept, but it was still written by the same people that made the crappy shows before it. And so they don't know, it wasn't their fault, they're crappy writers. They can't help it, but don't put a forehead on someone because you can't write a script and then say, no, this is important because it's sci-fi. It's like, set the same standard. The original Star Trek, see, people think that template makes it alright because they had that kind of stuff in the original show, but that was TV back then, man. If you hadn't put stuff like that in the original show, it wouldn't have been on the air at all. And that doesn't exist anymore. That situation does not exist anymore. It's not like that. I mean, sex still sells. I'm not saying it doesn't, but you can make a show that's a good show without having to put a lot of exploitive junk in it. And it was harder back then. Star Trek was a hard sell as is back then.
What do you think of Keanu Reeves as Kirk? You're okay with it?
No, Matthew McConaughey is McCoy. Damn, man. He's dead. Matthew McConaughey has 20 abs. His abs going up to his forehead. He looks like a Klingon. I don't know. He works out 27 hours a day. I don't know what he does. Heath Ledger was one of Brooks's picks. I did like Heath Ledger.
Yeah, Heath Ledger.
He's going to build some steam as the Joker. We mentioned Canoe. Tad Hamilton. That guy from the Tad Hamilton movie who was in Transformers. He's got a heroic chin. That's what I like about him. Let's see. Ed Norton. Here, I've got one. I've got a controversial pick for you. James Vanderbeek. He's not doing a thing.
Oh, wow.
Give Dawson a call.
Let's just get all those Dawson guys. You could get Pacey to be Spock.
Actually, if Pacey could play Spock, Angela Bassett can be anybody. Can we make her Uhura? Or if we're going with the Firefly pick, just round it out Gina Torres.
Hey, there you go, man. Let's give all those guys jobs, because they're all good.
What do you think about bringing in Billy Connolly as Scotty? Like, not if we do the first voyage, but if we skew old, we'll do Billy Connolly.
They should get that guy to play the transporter. He's really cool. They should get him
Statham
involved
and
somehow.
Jeez.
He's British. I mean, that's close.
But I think he actually can break the laws of physics, if those movies can be believed. I think that Jason Statham,
that's true.
He's like, I can do a split in
midair. All I
midair.
got, Captain.
Let's see. Yeah, we said hero. Oh, yeah. Here's our next pick for Chekhov. How about the guy who plays Borat?
Sasha Cohen?
Yeah, same accent. Just nice. That's nice. Just every time. Lock in the chorus to nice.
All right, well, as much fun as we're having talking about Star Trek and how much everything sucks, we got to stop doing this. Next time, it's all about happiness.
Puppies
I
and
promise. And joy.
It comes from love. It comes from love.
Yeah. Well, we're angry because we care.
We care.
And that's
we're
the
not
truth.
angry. We're just disappointed. Really.
You remember when your dad used to take a belt to you because he cared?
Yeah.
That's where we are right now.
Yeah.
We're taking a belt to you, Hollywood, because we love you. If you'd like to retread the same old thing and give us an email, feedback at tv8mydinner.com is the email that you should send that to. And also, while you're out there surfing the web, check out www.darkcrazy.com. That's Sean's site.
Some fiction, art, and poetry. If you want to submit anything, check us out.
All right, I guess I should tell my story now, because we teased them at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, this is your vindication. You tell your side of the story. Because I've told my side to so many people so long, I don't even know how it really happened.
Well, yeah, I'm glad. I appreciate that. Thank you for that.
Comes from love.
I at one point, I was living in a house, and Sean lived in that house too. It's a bunch of us lived in a house in college. You know how it is. And for Christmas, another friend of mine had given me... this is in like 96, 97. So the Star Wars toys had just started coming out again. The action figures after like a 10-year hiatus or whatever. And so a friend of mine gave me for Christmas. He gave me 2 of the 12-inch dolls, like a Han Solo and a Darth Vader, 12-inch guy. Yeah, they're like the Barbie doll
This is the important
sized
part
ones.
of the story.
Well, yeah, it's key to the story. They're the Barbie doll sized guys, and they were like collectible boxes and all that. But I opened them up because I didn't care if they were collectible, and I don't think they're worth anything now anyway. So I was right. But I took them out of the box, and I was I don't know why we were so bored, but I was sitting in Sean's bedroom, just bored out of my mind, and I had my 2 guys for some reason. And I'm pretty sure this was Sean's idea. This is my side of the story. I'm pretty sure Sean said, you know what'd be funny? We should shoot some kind of sketch with these, and you should put Darth Vader's clothes on Han and Han's clothes on Darth Vader. I was like, well, why not? So I'm doing this. And then another friend of ours, right? He wants to borrow my leather jacket to go out on a date, which is kind of weird anyway, because he has the date with him, and he's like, I'm going to go borrow this guy's jacket.
So you'll think I'm
And he
cool.
brings his date. Yeah, so you'll think I'm cool, right? So he brings this girl into the house and just comes back, and I don't know if we were not expecting them or what, but they open the door, and I'm standing there with a naked Han and a naked Darth Vader doll, one in each hand.
You're sitting in the floor with them. The clothes are scattered.
Yeah, I'm like sitting Indian style with with these 2 naked Darth Vader and Han Solo. Anyway, he brings this girl in who's clearly like a sorority girl. I don't remember what she looked like, but I'm sure she was a pretty girl. And so we're all just a little bit, because we did, we're in our pajamas or something.
We're not
we're
in
at
our
home.
pajamas in my bedroom
anyway,
playing with dolls.
Well, I mean,
we were dressed.
I'm just saying, we're certainly not, we're not, we don't have our cool guy, pretty girl coming in the room faces on.
You're telling the story off. You're not vindicating yourself at all.
Anyway, shut up. So the guy comes in, and the first thing he says is like, sorry to interrupt you while you're playing with your dolls.
But the look on his face, too, he looked
there is no response.
Stunned, too. Like, I don't even think he was playing.
Yeah,
he actually walked in and was like, ooh. Like, what did I walk into?
But instead of kind of steering her away and making light of it, like, oh, man, these guys are crazy, he's like, what are you doing, you freak? And I was like, there's no response to that. I'm like, I was just taking their
no coming
clothes
back from
off
that at all. Like,
shut up.
Nothing makes this cool.
You can't have my jacket.
That's all you can say.
But then he took my jacket and he leaves. And for years, Gilbert's been telling this to every girl he meets. I guess it's a good thing I'm married.
I'm pretty sure there was never any intention of filming these dolls.
Well,
I think that padding is there to add a justification.
My subconscious has arranged that for my own comfort.
I think it was just a curiosity for amusement. And I'll allow that may have been my idea.
Well, all right then.
Whatever makes you feel
all right
better.
Then. Whatever you got to say to make you feel better. At any rate, that's the story, so it's not as embarrassing as it sounded at the top of the show. And I hope you didn't mind sitting through the show to hear it. So I guess that's it. My name is Brooks.
I'm Sean.
And this is TV Ate My Dinner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Is for everybody, not just for the few. Anyone can share VD with someone nice as you. VD is for everybody, darling, have no doubt that anyone can get VD. That's what it's all about.
If you're curious or confused, get information or a pamphlet at most pharmacies or a health clinic. If you need help, see a doctor.
Dog crazy. Dog